So let's do a little recap. So what we did in our last video is we made a can. We essentially modeled our pop can. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint our can so that it actually looks like a pop can, because our game would look pretty boring if it was just a bunch of gray shapes. So um, let me pause the video for a second. Notice that labels on cans are actually made in 2D or flat. This is important because when it comes to texture painting, whether it's characters, if you're a programmer doing this or an audio guy or whatever, it's important to understand the entire pipeline. Notice here this is an unlabeled can. This is what we have now. We want to create the label. Now the way that labels are made, they're actually made flat like this, and then they're wrapped around the can itself, right? Um, And so what we want to do is create a 2D version of our can inside of Maya that we can later take into Photoshop and paint something like this, or maybe even use one of these labels might be cool. So the way to do that is we're going to do something called a UV editor, and that's what helps us to create the 2D version. There's a little bit of housekeeping we need to do to our model before we can take it into the UV mode. So there's really two steps. One, in the input section, right, inside of our channel box here, we have all of the steps that we did when we started modeling our can. We want to clean that out. So we're going to go to Edit, Delete by Type, History. Or actually, let's do Delete by Type, Non-Deformer History. And it's important because that will help us remember when we go into animation, it won't delete our animations. The other thing is we don't want, we want these all to be clean and the model to be cleaned out. So we have a 1.3 here, and this is important. Again, this will get in a little bit more detail on this when we get it back into Unity. So for now, what I'm going to do is go to Modify, and I'm going to click on Freeze Transformations. You can see that cleaned out my model here. Now, I like to UV in one view, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Spacebar here. And something I want you to remember is this is my Z-axis, this blue arrow, and I can tell because down here in the locator in the corner, you can see there's an arrow that points to the Z. I want you to always remember that's our front view. So up at the top here, I'm going to go to UV and then click on UV Editor. That opens this up. And this again is a 2D view that's already given to us by Maya. It tries its best to approximate what this should look like. This is actually not what we're looking for. So what I'm going to do is right click out here, go to face mode, and double click my can. So I select all the faces, right? So if I hit 4, you can see that all the faces are selected. I'm going to hold shift and right click, and I'm going to go down to mapping, and I'm just going to map it on planar map Z. What that did is that created a semi-flat version of my can, but it's not what we're looking for. We're looking for something that looks a little bit like those labels that we created. And again, at the end of this video, this process will make a lot better sense. So what we need to do is we need to cut up this 2D version of our can so that so we have different chunks of our can to draw on. So I'm going to right click out here and go to edge mode again. And I want to double click this bottom edge here, which is where the our lip started. So it's just this edge down here. So you can see it's this little edge here. It's a brown line. You can see it here. And then I want to cut that inside of my UVs. So if I go to Edit and let's see if it's under, Cut or Shift X. So I like to use hotkeys. So I'm going to just go back in here, right click. And if you left clicked and you deselected it, you can double click this or double click in here on that edge again. If you hit 4, just make sure that it went all the way around that brown line. And inside of here, I'm going to hit Shift and X. And I know it cut because when I click off of it, it gave me a thick white line or a thicker brown line. And then I'm going to right click inside my UV editor and go to UVs, and I'm going to double click this top part, hit W to select my move tool or click here, and just pull this up to make sure that it detached or it cut those. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom here. I'm going to right click out here, go to edge mode, and I want to get this edge right here, right? I want to get that same edge that starts my bottom, and then hit shift an X, and if you're having trouble with this, make sure you go to cut, or you can try cut in here. Right click, go to UV mode, and double click that bottom part and just pull it down. Now, what happens is this is not a flat version, right? If I draw on this, I'll really only be able to draw on one side of the can, which is that front side here. See where my Z-axis is? I'm going to right click and go to UV mode again, double click this, and off to the side here you'll see something called unfold, this unfold tab. I'm going to click this unfold button. And now you can see it took that entire bottom piece down here and it unfolded it. So what that means is you can see it created like a flatter version that goes all the way around. Now, I know this is clean because I'm going to hit 5 here so you can see this. If I click this checkerboard here, notice that these checker marks are pretty cleanly laid out, right? So if I go to UV mode here and I move this around just by double clicking it, you can see that the words U1 and V are pretty clean. But if I double click my top piece here, right, and I move this around, you can see it's all distorted and stretched, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to click unfold on that top piece, and you can see if I go around like this, it's nice and clean. And I'm just going to uncheck that so we can see that a little bit easier. I'm going to hit R and try to make it the same size as my other one. Try to get it as close as possible. Now, notice that this right here is a continuous section. So if I right click here and I go to UV mode and I hit unfold, it does its best, but what I want to do is create a flattened version. Like if I was to cut this pop can here and sort of pull it apart, sort of like, let me bring up those images. Sort of like this. I want it to be a flat rectangle, okay? So what I want to do, I'm going to undo this, just so I'm back to this flat mode. If my Z-axis is here, right, I'm just going to rotate around so that my arrow is pointing this way. And I'm just going to select one of these edges that go up and down from the, and you'll kind of, I'm going to hit Q, which is this guy here, just so that you can see, or you can click here, that it's really the entire length of that. And I know, again, because I'm looking here, that this is my Z and it's behind it. I'm going to hit Shift and X again. Right click, go to UV mode, and just double click that can. And I know that it selected all of these dots because I can see all the green dots in the top. And I'm going to hit unfold again. And now you can see I have a flattened version. I'm going to go ahead and straighten these UVs out by clicking this so it straightens it out. Then I'm going to hit R. And what I want to do in this 0 to 1 space is scale all of this down so it sort of fits. So once it's in there, I'm going to go ahead and do align and snap and click this so it snaps it to the bottom. Double click this guy, snap that to that corner, double click this one, and then I'm going to click this box here to snap that. And then I'm just going to hit R, scale these down, or select this, and just try to position it all inside that box. Now I might want to add like a sword or something to this guy later, so so what I want to do is just give myself a little bit of this extra space around the can. I'm going to kind of pack it in there a little bit nicely, but all this dead space around here is going to be used for other elements. So this is essentially what you want your UVs to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control S to save this. And I'll just go ahead and throw this on my desktop. I'm going to make a folder called PopCan. Go inside of there, and I want to save this as a Maya ASCII file. And I'm going to name this PopCan. I'm going to hit save again. An alternative to hitting Control S is you can go up to File, Save, Seen As. Again, make sure you're on Maya ASCII. In that folder on your desktop that you created PopCan, just make another one called PopCan, and I'm just going to write over the same one. All right, the next thing is we need to get these flat UVs out into Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is inside of image here, I'm going to go to UV Snapshot, and that opens it up. I'm going to leave it at 2048, but I want to go with a JPEG. I'm going to go to Browse, and I'm going to navigate to that folder on my desktop, which is called PopCan, and I'm going to hit, I'm going to name it pop can underscore color, and I'm going to hit save. Now I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to open up Photoshop. All right, back in Photoshop, you can see it remembered a lot of the other projects I'm working on. I'm going to go ahead and hit File, Open here. Navigate to my desktop. Go inside that same PopCan folder, and let's see, did I save that in the PopCan folder? I thought I did. Let's see, PopCan. Let's make sure that I saved it as a JPEG. So I'm going to go back into Maya really quick. I think I forgot to hit Apply or Apply and Close. Now, when I go back into Photoshop, you can see that it appeared here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Open. And you can see here that I have my PopCan UVs. And what we can do just as a test is I'm going to go back into my Google here, and I'm going to use one of these guys as a base, okay? Ordinarily, if you have some graphic design skills, you want to do this yourself. I kind of like this image, so I'm going to right click and just hit copy image. Back in Photoshop, I'm going to hit Control and V, so you can see there's this image and it's on its own layer. And then I'm going to go to Edit or Control T, Free Transform. And I'm just going to do my best to scale this out, and it's going to be a little distorted because it's not, it wasn't exactly made for this, so you can see it's a little stretched out. So I'm just going to overlay this on top. And then I'm going to grab maybe this gray color. I'm going to hit B for brush. And I'm going to hit my, below my plus and minus keys are brackets. I'm going to go to this bracket and just make it a little bit bigger. Or you can right click with brush selected and you can adjust the size of your brush here. And I'm just going to paint a little gray area here, just kind of covering up that area. And you can see here in my Photoshop, I've got all those layers. And maybe where this marine guard paint is, I'm going to hit a B again. And maybe I'll make another new layer up here. And I'll create a face. So I'll just do an eye here. Maybe two little dots. Let's go with some black dots here. And then a smiley face. And, you know, I can make another layer underneath this and just kind of like, I don't know, maybe make a bigger circle here and just sort of create that. So there's my smiley face. Now I'm going to go to File, Save As, and in that desktop PopCan folder, I'm going to go to JPEG, and you can see PopCan color is here. I'm just going to save over that and hit yes. Hit OK. Now let's apply this texture that we just created inside of Maya. I'm going to close my UVs because I'm done with that. And I want to clean this. So I'm going to go to Edit, Delete All by Type, Non-Deform or History. And I'm going to right click on this can, go to Assign New Material. So I'm just holding the right mouse button down and this Assign New Material window pops up. I'm going to select Lambert. And I want to access this material. So I'm going to right click and go to Material Attributes. And you can see that it created a Lambert 2. So I'm going to name this Pop Can underscore texture. And under this color map here, I'm going to click this checker bar, go to File, go to my option here, go to the desktop, navigate to my PopCan folder, grab this and hit Open and close this. Now I don't see anything yet, and the reason is because I need to hit 6 to turn on texture mode. Okay, so let's go to our material to make sure that I actually did not even apply it. So I'm going to hit that again, make sure I go to File, click this folder. Now I'll select it. It seems like it didn't load it right away. And you can see here, now I have a texture. So if I want to add maybe a little label, like a little hole where the top of the pop can goes, I can go back into Photoshop and I can hide this for a second just so I can see it. And maybe go up here to where my face is, because remember it's on layers here. Hit B and maybe grab a black dot. Let me hide that one more time so it's somewhere in there. So I'll add that black dot for where my can is, hit Control S, go to JPEG, and I'm just going to write over that file. Here's my PopCan color. Hit yes. I'm going to hit OK. Back into Maya. If you don't see it update right away, or maybe it's on the bottom, I don't know, I'm going to right click, go to Material Attributes. Inside of here, I'm going to hit Reload, and it looks like it was on the bottom there. So, you know, what I want to do is maybe, I don't know, add another black dot there just to check it. Control S, JPEG, hit yes. And then let's go back into Maya, reload. You can see there's our little hole. So this is kind of like a nice little foray. In the next video, we're actually going to rig our can.